Hello there, this is Heirs to the Kingdom channel, and in today's lesson we're doing chapters 23 and 24 in the book of Deuteronomy. If you're new to this, it's a Bible study channel going through the King James Bible, not skip anything as Scriptures command. So if you would, like, subscribe, and share this content, and let's get started in today's lesson. So last we left off at the end of 22, it was talking about if a man takes a woman that's not betrothed and not a wife, but is a virgin, and takes her, humbles her, which means, lays with her. And it even says, if he lays hold on her, then lays with her, which means he took her against her will, took her virginity, then she's now his wife. Now, what that means, though, is she has the protections that a wife has protections. And so the reason being is most men do not want a woman that's been with another man. So he has to treat her as wife, and she has to treat him as husband. This is their rules at the time. Now, the 50 shekels of silver in today's currency would be about $250,000. One shekel, I think 50 shekels of silver would be like 4 to 7 years, is what it's estimated, of annual salary. So if you take it somewhere in between, say 5, and today's average salary is about $50,000, that would be about $250,000 or more. Is what that was the punishment payment for, taking the man's daughter without his permission, so on and so forth. If he didn't do this, well, then he could be stoned to death. So this was their little judgment on that, their rules on that. Also, at the end of that, it says, a man shall not take his father's wife nor discover his father's skirt, which means no son is to be with a woman that his father's known. Stuff of that nature. But yeah, this was, the ending of 22 was talking more about the adultery, this, that, and the other, dying, people being stoned to death or being killed for committing adultery, the woman and the man, if it was consensual. Just the man if it was not consensual, but she was betrothed. That means already been spoken for. She's already, a fiance, engaged. Now, in their times, there was a virgin's dowry. And so I don't know what the dowry was. I don't think it was 50 shekels of silver, which would be equivalent today, because then no one would be married, because most people don't have that extra money just to pay for that. But there was a virgin's dowry, and normally it would be like, an exchange of livestock, some money, or this, that, and the other. But it had to show proof that the man, to have a wife, he had the means to provide for her, and that he truly wanted that woman as wife. So let's go ahead and get started here. 23 verse 1. He that is wounded in the stones, or hath his privy member cut off, shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. That was talking about, the stones, meaning is, well, you got the idea of the manhood. The privy member, that's a man's manhood. The stones, when you got the idea of that, hopefully you do. That was mean if you were a eunuch at these times, you weren't allowed to enter with the congregation into the temples and stuff. I said, we're so lucky today we're not under Israelite law. But in some areas, Israelite law would make our civilization better. But, especially the part with the punishments for adultery and home wreckers and this, that, and the other. But let's continue on here, verse 2. A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord, even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord. An Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord, even to their 10th generation shall they not enter into the congregation of the Lord forever. Because they met you not with bread and with water in the way when ye came forth out of Egypt, and because they hired against thee Balaam the son of Beor of Pethor of Mesopotamia to curse thee. Nevertheless, the Lord thy God would not hearken unto Balaam, but the Lord thy God turned the curse into a blessing unto thee, because the Lord thy God loved thee. Thou shalt not seek their peace nor their prosperity all thy days forever. Thou shalt not abhor an Edomite, for he is thy brother. Thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian, because thou wast a stranger in his land. The children that are begotten of them shall enter into the congregation of the Lord in their 3rd generation. When the host goeth forth against thine enemies, then keep thee from every wicked thing. If there be among you any man that is not clean by reason of uncleanness, that chanceth him by night, then shall he go abroad out of the camp, he shall not come within the camp. Now, for that, it's meaning men know that they discharge during puberty or this, that, and the other and stuff of that nature. But that's what that's talking about here, is like if you're already in the camp, which I think the camp here is talking more like the military system. I don't know, because like, they did tell everybody to have their camp, of the Benjamites, the Danites, the 12 tribes were to be in camp. So I don't know if it was military related, but still, they're just talking about that. He should go outside the camp, or should not come within the camp. He may have something, and but anyways, this just happens from time to time. Normally we call them wet dreams today, because even as an older person, it can still happen, depending upon what you're dreaming about. But anyways, verse 11. But it shall be, when evening cometh on, he shall wash himself with water, and when the sun is down, he shall come into the camp again. Thou shalt have a place also within the camp, whither thou shalt go forth abroad. And thou shalt have a paddle upon thy weapon, and it shall be, when thou wilt ease thyself abroad, thou shalt dig therewith, and shalt turn back and cover that which cometh from thee. So I was talking about using the bathroom, having a shovel. Verse 14. For the Lord thy God walketh in the midst of thy camp to deliver thee, and to give up thine enemies before thee. Therefore shall thy camp be holy, and that he see no unclean thing in there, and turn away from thee. Even in the military today, or you don't use the bathroom close to where you're living at. You go outside the camp far away, or this, that, and the other, some distance away, and you do your business and then bury it and come back, whatever. But let's continue on. The reason you didn't want to leave it out in the open is because flies and bugs get on that, which eventually could end up in your food and then transfer stuff to from and start causing a plague or a sickness. But military, it's just so no one possibly knows that you were there, type thing. the smell would give away your position too. But anyways, continue on. 15. Thou shalt not deliver unto his master the servant which is escaped from his master unto thee. He shall dwell with thee, even among you, in that place which he shall choose in one of thy gates, where it liketh him best. Thou shalt not oppress him. There shall be no whore of the daughters of Israel, nor a sodomite of the sons of Israel. Now, we use the word of sodomy today. You know what sodomite means, and that it's, well, you get the idea of that. But see, this rule still applies today. Godly women are not to be whores. And men are not to do a sodomy. It's not right in the eyes of God still today. Verse 18, thou shalt not bring the hire of a whore or the price of a dog into the house of the Lord thy God for any vow. For even both these are abomination unto the Lord thy God. That's what I was talking about. If you make a vow that sins against God, he does not honor that. He will not hold you to that. He specifically doesn't want you to do it. That's why he will not honor it. 19. Thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that is lent upon usury. That means, gaining profit from letting somebody borrow something. If you're giving out a charity or this, that, and the other, you're not trying to make a profit off of them. 20. Unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury, but unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon usury, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all that thou settest thine hand to in the land whither thou goest to possess it. So here we find that part about the usury section to a stranger, kind of supporting, banks and credit card companies and what they do, charging interest. But if you're greedy about it, which is like, abusive about it, well, then it's a totally different thing. That's a sin on itself. It's like, God doesn't mind you if it's your business, it's your company. That's how you make money is one thing, but when you're greedy with it, well, then that's a sin all on its own. But also people should be wiser and just not even use those systems if they can. But 21. When thou shalt vow a vow unto the Lord thy God, thou shalt not slack to pay it. For the Lord thy God will surely require it of thee, and it would be sin in thee. But if thou shalt forbear to vow, it shall be no sin in thee. That which is gone out of thy lips thou shalt keep and perform, even a freewill offering, according as thou hast vowed unto the Lord thy God, which thou hast promised with thy mouth. When thou comest into thy neighbor's vineyard, then thou mayest eat grapes thy fill at thine own pleasure, but thou shalt not put any in thy vessel. When thou comest into the standing corn of thy neighbor, then thou mayest pluck the ears with thine hand, but thou shalt not move a sickle unto thy neighbor's standing corn. When a man hath taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he hath found some uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement, and give it in her hand, and send her out of his house. And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife. So here's the part about divorcements and stuff, where it says like the woman can remarry. Now, it's not saying that she was a bad person. I mean, we have to go with the scriptures on what makes someone unclean. She could have an ailment, a discharge, something of that nature, blah, 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 whatever. touched dead things. I mean, it's like some uncleanness. It didn't say that she was a bad woman. A bad woman is not to remarry. She's to turn from her wicked ways and go back and serve her husband. Now, that's New Testament things here. Because Jesus said if you're divorced for any other reason than infidelity, you shall remain single. Here you're allowed to give parchment of divorcement, and the person can go remarry. Now the uncleanness here, well, it doesn't mention adultery because adultery would be death. Now, the person that committed adultery, I don't think that they have a right to remarry, for the infidelity part. But I mean, pretty much that's a lot of things we have to pray about in that manner, because there's so many stipulations and weirdness going on today with, people being dishonest to even get married and then use the court systems and the laws to justify something, whatever their unhappiness, blah, blah, blah. But here it doesn't mention anything about, the woman being at fault causing the man to not be happy with her. So the insinuation, let's continue on here though before do more in that background of that. Verse 3. And if the latter husband hate her, and write her a bill of divorcement, and giveth it in her hand, and sendeth her out of his house, or if the latter husband die, which took her to be his wife, her former husband which sent her away may not take her again to be his wife after that she is defiled. For that is abomination before the Lord, and thou shalt not cause the land to sin, which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance. When a man hath taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war, neither shall he be charged with any business, but he shall be free at home 1 year, and shall cheer up his wife which he hath taken. No man shall take the nether or the upper millstone to pledge, for he taketh a man's life to pledge. Now, talking about that, bringing that shall cheer up his wife, that means get her pregnant. So we're going back onto this, and nowhere does it talk about, the woman doing wrong to cause the divorcement. It's just, the one man isn't happy with her, or this, that, and the other. And say the next man isn't happy with her, gives her divorcement, or she becomes a widow, the first man can't have her back. Stuff of that nature. So God was really strict on all this stuff. And we should still think about this, in that manner, that God holds marriage to be a very sacred thing and to be a vow and a pledge that should be honored to the most. It's not something that you just, it sounds fun to do. I'm not happy now, I want someone else. No, it doesn't work that way. If your words mean nothing, then you mean nothing. That's pretty much what Scripture talks about. Now, if you don't know what the millstone is, like taking a pledge means taking it for payment. The millstone is what people use to make food, to make oil. You had upper and lower millstone. They were just two huge rocks kind of made round, and one would roll on the other and crush the wheat into powder, or it would crush the grapes to wine, crush the olives and get the oil out of them. The millstone was used for a lot of things. So you're never to take a man's for a pledge to his provisions. Like I talk about how much of a sin it is today, because this kind of still stands today. If a man uses tools to make money, and then you say, well, you owe me something, so I'm taking your tools until you pay me, well, you're taking his livelihood. Same thing as you take his home because of taxes or whatever else. You're taking his ability to live. That shelter is a necessity. If a person needs to get to and from work, they need transportation, then you take transportation from them. Well, then you take their ability to work away. Now, if you used your home or your vehicle or tools or something like that as collateral on a loan, well, that's a different story. Let's continue on here, verse 7. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, and maketh merchandise of him, or selleth him, then that thief shall die, and thou shalt put evil away from among you. Take heed in the plague of leprosy, that thou observe diligently, and do according to all that the priest, to all that the priest, the Levite, shall teach you, as I commanded them, so ye shall observe to do. My dyslexia kicked in there, and I'm like, some of those words, they're not worded how we would speak today, and sometimes it makes me, my brain flip around and do somersaults. Verse 9. Remember what the Lord thy God did unto Miriam by the way, after that ye were come forth out of Egypt. When thou dost lend thy brother anything, thou shalt not go into his house to fetch his pledge. Thou shalt stand abroad, and the man to whom thou dost lend shall bring out the pledge abroad unto thee. So another teachings today, Christ teaches that if someone steals from you, you don't ask for it back. You say, fine. I don't know if that means about the very expensive, heavy dollar items today, especially stuff you need to live off of. These are things also we need to put in our little prayer list about. It's like, just make sure we do the right thing. But I think normally it would mean like some money, some clothes, some food, basic provisions type stuff. But you get the idea. Let's continue on here, verse 12. And if the man be poor, thou shalt not sleep with his pledge. In any case, that means you don't wait around. If the man's poor and you've pledged him something, if he did this or did that, especially when it comes to wages, you don't sleep on it. It's like, you make sure they get it as soon as possible. That way they are able to have provisions. 13. In any case, thou shalt deliver him the pledge again when the sun goeth down, that he may sleep in his own raiment, and bless thee, and it shall be righteous unto thee before the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not oppress an hired servant that is poor and needy, whether he be of thy brethren or of thy strangers that are in thy land within thy gates. At his day thou shalt give him his hire, neither shall the sun go down upon it, for he is poor, and setteth his heart upon it, lest he cry against thee unto the Lord, and it be sin unto thee. So when you got people like I'm going to use McDonald's in this situation. McDonald's workers are not hoity-toities. They're not rich people. They're literally day by day. So they should be paid day by day. They work, they get paid. They don't have extra money sitting in the bank to live off of until you decide to pay them. Rich people are people kind of more well off, where they kind of have, stuff like that. Poor people don't. They need stuff daily. And it helps them out daily. So, I think we should still be doing this today. But let's continue on here, 16. The father shall not be put to death for the children, neither shall the children be put to death for the fathers. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin. Thou shalt not pervert the judgment of the stranger, nor of the fatherless, nor take a widow's raiment to pledge. Now, I would take this also as taking a widow's home because she can't afford property taxes because she doesn't work anymore. Well, she never really did work. She was a housewife and her husband passed away. I would take that as well. Like I said, taxes are, scriptures already talk about, no extortioner will enter the kingdom, and taxes are that, since if you don't pay us, we're going to hurt you type thing, whatever that is. That's what falls under definition of extortion. But let's continue on 18. But thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in Egypt, and the Lord thy God redeemed thee thence. Therefore I command thee to do this thing. When thou cuttest down thine harvest in thy field, and hast forgot a sheaf in the field, thou shalt not go again to fetch it. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, or for the widow, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the work of thine hands. I remember correctly, the sheaf part is like, you bound it up and stuff, and you're going to put it on your shoulders and carry it out. That's what I'm talking about, binding up. You use the sickle to cut down the weed or cut down the corn, and you tie everything up, and that's what I'm talking about there. Anyways, 20. When thou beatest thine olive tree, thou shalt not go over the boughs again. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. When thou gatherest the grapes of thy vineyard, thou shalt not glean it afterward. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. This is extra food that's kind of left over. Like if you already gathered from the olive tree and some things didn't fall, you leave them there. Same thing with the grapes. If some things ain't fully ripe yet, you let them sit there and get more ripe and let strangers have it. You already got your harvest, stuff like that. It's, helping one another type thing, especially helping the poor. Verse 22 in the last verse. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in the land of Egypt. Therefore I command thee to do this thing. So we're kind of under some of this stuff today where it's like, if you can help somebody, you should. If you have, far more than them. Now, if you're poor and they're poor, and it's like you have something for you and you don't have extras, well, that's a totally different story. But when you have an overabundance, you're supposed to share because you've been blessed. You're to help those who haven't been blessed. That commandment still stands today. A lot of rich people don't think that way. They think, well, I've been blessed, so I'm going to live a very blessed life, and you poor people can go, go off someplace else and do your poor thing. That's a big no-no in the eyes of God, Old and New Testament. These are a lot of things to pray about. There's always something to pray about. I always talk about this. You pray for the lost, the found, yourself, others, all people, all nations, all situations. Pray for the poor, the rich, the in-between, the middle. Because everybody needs prayer and everybody needs help in some things. Everybody needs prayer. We're commanded to pray everywhere and never cease praying. So pick something and pray about it. That's all you got to do. And don't forget to give God all the praise, glory, and worship, and thanks and everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the indifferent. I'll go ahead and end this lesson here. I want to get away from doing the 3 chapters. I was noticing I was reading really quick and stuff, getting back to 2. We got, I think 28 is going to be one by itself with 60-something verses. And nothing in between there before or after was going to be able to go into like 2 chapters to not go over a lot of, a long time. So trying to get back into doing Bible studies, which is actually supposed to be a Bible study. Like I said, I need prayer too. Pray for me, I pray for you. I'm going to go ahead and end this lesson here today. So until next time, God bless, good day, and goodbye.